Hey, what's going on? John Ramdeen here, and this is Fight News Now Extra. UFC 160 gets a heavyweight tilt that could deliver a slugfest. Dominic Cruz, Brandon Vera, and others severed ties with their former jiu-jitsu coach. A UFC champion would love to see more random drug tests, and one of the pound-for-pound best gives his take on the upcoming middleweight title bout between Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman. Those are your headlines. Let's get to it. After initial reports stated that former K1 champion Mark Hunt turned down a bout with Brazilian bomber Junior dos Santos, MMA Fighting has received confirmation that the Super Samoan has indeed agreed to meet the former UFC heavyweight king and the co-main event of UFC 160, scheduled to take place at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas, Nevada on May 25th. The event will feature Cain Velasquez taking on Bigfoot Silva in a rematch for the heavyweight world title. After allegations of sexual assault and intimidation towards students, UFC champion Dominic Cruz, Brandon Vera, and others from the Alliance MMA team in San Diego, California, have cut ties with jiu-jitsu coach Lloyd Irvin. On New Year's Day, two of Irvin's students were accused of sexually assaulting a female student, which opened the floodgates from others that allege Irvin has abused his power, forcing students to engage in sexual favors with the promise of success. It seems that one student, UFC bantamweight Mike Easton, has decided to stay with Irvin while the situation sorts itself out. He does have a Team Lloyd Irvin tattoo, so I guess that means he has no choice. UFC lightweight champion Benson Henderson says he's in favor of random drug tests. The 29-year-old, who only recently started using supplements, called PED users mentally weak and is all for any type of testing. Bendo is coming off an impressive decision victory over Nathan Diaz and is now set to take on Gilbert Melendez on April 20th on UFC on Fox 7. And finally, UFC welterweight king George St-Pierre, who is set to take on Nick Diaz in the main event of UFC 158, gives his thoughts on the upcoming middleweight title bout between Anderson Silva and Chris Weidman. The French-Canadian believes that the fight is not going the distance.
It's my friend Chris Weidman, and I see him in training. I believe he's going to beat Anderson Silva. I believe it's a bad matchup for Anderson Silva. It's very bad. Not only he's going to beat, I believe he's going to finish Anderson Silva. I believe it's not going to be too long, that fight. This will be, people will be shocked. But depend. Anderson Silva is smart because Chris Weidman, he come back from an injury, a long layoff. So it's that time to fight him right now is good. He's going to be the best time to fight Chris Weidman right now. So Chris needs to be sure he get very well prepared for this fight.
Joining me now, my main man, Mr. Robin Black, and we heard comments from the UFC welterweight champion George St-Pierre stating that Chris Weidman is going to finish Anderson Silva. Yes, I guess it makes sense. He finished Mark Munoz, Tom Lawler, and Jesse Bongfeld, so it only makes sense that he would finish one of the greatest fighters in the history of mixed martial arts.
You know, George is not alone on this.
He's been drinking.
Yeah, well, there's a ton of analysts, there's a ton of insiders, a ton of people who believe that Weidman truly is the guy to beat Anderson Silva. There's one problem. Yes, all the skills are there. His wrestling, his athleticism, he's driven, he's young, he believes. But the one problem is you've got to do everything right tonight, right now at game time. And he doesn't have the experience to be able to say that with 100% certainty, and Anderson Silva does. But that aside, this is a guy who can beat him.
One of the things you have to think about when talking about pound-for-pound best, and of course George St-Pierre is in that list, Jose Aldo, and of course the Brazilian Anderson Silva, we have to forget that these guys are considered the pound-for-pound best because they continue to evolve. You see them improve on whatever deficiencies that they have. And all you have to do is go back and look at Anderson's first fight with Chael Sonnen to his second fight, and you've seen the steps that he's had to take to make sure that his wrestling or his anti-grappling is there. And I just think to say that Chris Weidman's going to come out and finish this guy is ludicrous.
Well, I think we're reading each other's mail here, brother, because what you're saying is, you know, game time, proven, night after night, performance after performance. Weidman hasn't done that yet, and Silva has. And that's the big question mark here, because when it comes to straight-up skill, ability to perform, and level of athleticism, I mean, Weidman has the tools. You can't bet money on Chris Weidman in this fight. GSP maybe does, but the rest of us shouldn't. But he absolutely can win this fight.
What about dealing with the pressure of, number one, Anderson Silva's precision striking? If this guy hits you with his punches or his knees, he can change everything.
Yeah, and the psychology, it plays so much into it. You go in, what is this, fight number 10 for Weidman? In fight number 10, you listed the guys he's faced. In fight number 10, all of a sudden, it isn't those guys. It's one of the greatest of all time. And your heart rate goes up every time he feints at you, every time he moves towards you, and you start overcommitting, you start overdriving yourself. And that's what he's going to have to play with. Psychology, mental strength is going to be a huge element of this.
Yeah, and Anderson Silva is the type of guy that always flips the script. He can be aggressive if he wants to be. He can be very conservative, as we saw in the Patrick Cote fight or the Damian Maia fight, and he can really end fights wherever he has to. If he's on his back, he can finish fights there. If he's standing, he can finish fights there. If he's in the clinch, he's just so diverse, and I think because people are just so used to seeing him win, I think they want to see a new champion, opposed to saying, you know what, I think that this guy, I mean, Chris Weidman's a talented guy, and maybe in the future he does become the middleweight champion, but you're really putting him up against the cream of the crop of all time.
Well, he can do it, and counterpoint here is Weidman also has a crazy amount of skills. He has athleticism he's never faced. He's got elite wrestling, and Sean Williams said he's got the top MMA jiu-jitsu that he's ever seen, and he's a top jiu-jitsu guy. And the thing is, we haven't seen everything he can do. He has all of these skills that Anderson Silva doesn't know about. And this is a fascinating one, and it's going to be a brilliant fight.
I don't think we've seen everything from Anderson Silva yet, but more Fight News Now Extra coming up.